As you can see, winter's upon us. It's been below freezing for quite a while now, and it's going to continue on. And something, whether you're moving snow at home or on a farm like us feeding cows, you need to keep your equipment going. So we're going to stop by Robson Tractor today in Thompson, Ohio, and they're going to give us tips and tricks to keep our equipment running through the cold. Hello and welcome. So obviously we've had a pretty cold, snowy winter this year. And everyone as you drive by sees they're using their tractors, they're using snow blowers, everything to remove the snow. And obviously we haven't been above freezing for the last 10 days, and I don't see us being above freezing in the near future. So I'm here with Jacob from Robinson Equipment in Thompson, Ohio, and he's going to give us some tips and tricks to make sure when we need the machine it starts.
Hello guys, I'm Jacob here. I've been a diesel technician here for 4 years now. I've been around the equipment my whole life. And winter does present some challenges, especially with below freezing temperatures, or even recently when it's been, below zero at nights. You go out in the morning and use your equipment, it doesn't always want to start. You have some running issues there. Some of the biggest problems we see come into the shop is usually gelled diesel fuel. People go out in the morning to start their tractor. It'll either start and die right away or it won't start at all. And then usually we get phone calls saying, hey, it won't start. Usually it's gelled fuel in the filters or even water that's entered the fuel system that has frozen in the filters and have blocked the filters up, which is usually a pretty easy revision. We just either use an anti-gel in the diesel fuel. There's a couple companies out there that make good stuff. There's other companies out there that you want to stay away from.
Now, is that something we should be putting in the diesel fuel or winter additive?
Yes. I personally run winter additive in all my diesel equipment, and then even equipment and stuff I run it all in, as it prevents the water from freezing when it's in the fuel, and it lowers the freeze rate of the diesel fuel. So it will still freeze if it's like negative 40 out, negative 50, which I hope here in Ohio we don't see temperatures like that. But as far as our average winter temperatures go, it alleviates the diesel gel pretty frequently. You won't have many problems with that. Another problem we see a lot of too is frozen hydraulic oil. A lot of people leave their machines outside, which allow moisture to get into the hydraulic system, and then water will sit at the bottom, and the bottom is your suction hydraulic filter. So it freezes that filter up, and it takes hours to melt that water down, or that ice down from the freezing there from running. That's another big problem we see. A lot of things are too on older equipment. A lot of people don't test their glow plugs out before winter, and when they come to start their equipment, it doesn't want to start. I always recommend people to test their glow plugs out, making sure they are working, and it's very easy to do. So that way you can replace them before winter.
And also using a block heater helps a lot.
Yep. A lot of modern day equipment, within the last probably 5 years, the block heater isn't as necessary because they're using higher compression rates and higher PSI in their diesel fuel, so it doesn't need that heat to start. A lot of older equipment from 2015 and older, block heaters is pretty much a necessary thing to use. You can plug it in overnight, and all it does is heat the coolant up, keeps the block warm, which allows it for a much easier start. People are always worried about leaving it plugged in overnight. That's what it's intended for. You got the coolant, cooling down that block heater, so it won't ever see a certain temperature, so you don't have to worry about it catching on fire. And 90% of times, the worst that's ever going to happen is it's just going to stop working, because all it does is create resistance to create the heat. And if something were to go wrong, it usually just breaks, and and then you have an open in your electric circuit there, and it's not going to cause any damage. Worst it's going to do is blow your breaker on your house.
Now, when you go out, the tractor's not starting. Should you just keep cranking, or do you take a break, or at what point do you say, hey?
So it kind of does depend on the situation there. When you're cranking for a long period of time, that does damage your starter. And every time you do that, you're wearing those brushes on that starter, and there's only so much brush life left to use. and then you'll be replacing starters more often. I like to cycle, if it's a diesel engine, I like to cycle the glow plugs or the grid heater a couple times. If they're on for, say, 10 seconds at a time, I hold it for 10 seconds, I'll shut the key off, go for another 10 seconds, and I'll do that 3 or 4 times. Older machines, you can hold it there, and as long as you hold it there, that's how long glow plugs are going to be on for. Do 25 seconds at a time so you don't overheat your glow plugs and stress the wiring out too much. But do that a couple of cycles there, and usually you'll be good to go. It should hit, 5 to 8 seconds, ideally, right? And that winter fuel additive will help with cold starting. There's a agent in there, I don't remember what it's called, that will help cold starts.
Okay.
As far as gas equipment goes, as much as I hate starting fluid, as far as gas equipment goes, if you're cranking and it won't fire in the cold, that's honestly the best way to go. Unless it has a block heater. A lot of gas equipment doesn't. Some do. If it doesn't have a block heater, really starting fluid there is going to be your best. By no means am I a fan of it, but it does work.
And that's where we was talking about. I have a tractor from the 70s, and it's a gas engine. It actually has a factory block heater in it. Now, is there safety do's and don'ts with starting fluid?
Yeah, so I'm highly against starting fluid on diesel engines. The compression in diesel engines are too high, and you can cause a lot of damage as far as head gasket damage goes, piston damage goes, and actually you don't want any heat using starting fluid. So if you have glow plugs, you want to disconnect your glow plugs, disconnect your grid heater, because as soon as that starting fluid sees that glow plug heat or that grid heater heat, it will ignite.
Okay.
And sometimes it ignites not in the cylinder.
Yeah.
It'll ignite in the intake system and blow that apart, or it ignites at the same time in 2 different companion cylinders, and instead of working the way it should, you'll blow and bend rods and stuff. So in diesel engines, I'm not a fan of starting fluid. Now there are scenarios where it is part of the job, you have to use it, but for the average person, I say stay away from it. As far as the gas tractor goes, gas is already high, ignites very easily, which isn't much different than starting fluid. So there really isn't a danger of using it on gas equipment. And you don't want to sit there and just, let it run off either. That's not the intended use. It's just to get it that first little bit of go, and then have the gas kind of take over.
Now we're talking about gas. We use that in our snow blowers, lawn tractors, older tractors too. Are there any winter additives you suggest for the gasoline engines? Or?
So as far as additives go for gasoline, not really. Gas has a very low freezing point to begin with, so it's not really it won't gel up on you. I will say though, the higher the ethanol content is, the harder it will be to start in the winter. So if you can stay away from that ethanol fuel, that would be more beneficial. Now, obviously in the tractors, you are going to run ethanol fuel, because, buying 100% pure gas will get expensive over time. As far as your handheld equipment goes, your mowers, if you could find 100% pure gas in there, that will make a huge difference.
Which by us, there's a gas station in Chardon, for example, you can get.
Yep, Chardon Oil has 100% pure gas, and they also have off-road diesel. Another thing to mention too, while we're on this subject, is gas stations. A lot of gas stations are supposed to be putting anti-gel in their off-road diesel fuel. Not all of them do. Chardon Oil, I know, does, because I've never had problems there from my point of view. But some stations you do have to watch because they don't always do that, and I can tell from working on customer tractors which ones do and which ones don't.
Then, like on your snowblower and stuff, just normal maintenance. Make sure the spark plug's replaced each year.
Yep.
Now, something that happens to me sometimes when you don't have a heated garage, the snowblower will freeze up. You want to make sure you melt that before you start it up again, right? Or
yes.
You'll break some shear pins.
Yeah. If you want to make sure, anytime you're done using your snowblower, I don't care if it's on a tractor, PTO driven, if it's a walk behind snowblower, gas driven, any style snowblower, anytime you're done with it, you park it outside, park it in the garage, you should always chip that snow off, because it's a lot easier chipping off when it's snow than not when it's frozen ice. Or else you will blow shear pins, belts. The tractor mounted snowblowers are very well known for going through shear pins because of that, and it takes a couple pins to quick clear the ice out. As far as the walk behind snow blowers go, they do have shear pins. 90% of the time, you're going to burn your belt up first before you bust a shear pin there.
All right. I think that's about it. Unless you have any last tips for people.
No, not really. Make sure your battery's charged kind of start of winter. It doesn't hurt to put a battery tender on some equipment out there, especially when you're going to be cranking a little extra. And then I always recommend fuel filters before winter. A lot of people go by hour base for fuel filter changes. I always do mine a week, 2 weeks before winter. That way any moisture that's in those filters, debris, is not there with the new filters, which will make the winter much easier when it comes to starting equipment.
Now, do you suggest, like you were talking, a hydraulic filter freezing up for fuel, do you suggest keeping extra fuel or filters on hand?
Keep extra filters on hand. We've had cases where we've seen tractors come in where the hydraulic oil looks like mayonnaise just from how much water's in there. And in that case, you have to drain the hydraulic oil and let it drip overnight to get all that moisture out before we put new oil in there. Another thing to touch on too, there are some nicer hydraulic oils out there. They are a little bit more expensive that have water wicking properties to them. So the water doesn't mix in with the hydraulic oil, and it kind of coats everything, so it kind of keeps moisture out of the system. So a lot of the moisture is brought in from condensation. In the winter, you heat the tractor up, and it cools down, you heat the tractor up, and all those cycles bring in condensation. So it's not even just, even if you park it inside every night, you're still going to get moisture in there one way or another. So if you spend a little bit more money on hydraulic oils with the water wicking properties, that will also be very beneficial. If you run cheaper oil in there, it doesn't have the same properties, and you get a lot of water that will mix with that oil. And that's when you have hydraulic systems that freeze, and that's not very fun to deal with in the winter.
So the main thing is just prepare ahead of time, and you'll be
Yes. Yep.
Cheaper's not always better.
No, that's never the case.
Yeah, pay for it now or pay for it later.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I'd like to thank Jacob for taking the time to go over a few winter tips with us to keep our equipment running.
I appreciate you for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.